Hello my friends, so many good news we have today. Let's start from this one. I took it from the Russian military blogger Anatoly Radov, who says that the situation for the Russian army in Dobropila direction is worsening every freaking day. That's the English translation. Dobropila direction, unfortunately, the situation continues to worsen. Unfortunately for them and good for us. Dobropila is over here. Russians actually tried to go there, but with the help of the 1st Azov Corps, they were annihilated on the way. And now Ukraine is moving more in Nikhanorivka, so we don't have the recent update from the deep state military map source, but as you saw, Russians are already screaming about their group being in a very terrible situation. Yeah, the situation is very bad because supplies are being controlled by Ukrainian FPV drone strikes. Well, maybe not even controlled, but cancelled. And since the start of this counteroffensive operation of Ukrainian army, Ukrainian officials report about 2,000, at least 2,000 troops losses for the Russian army, which makes it absolute nonsense as for me. So Russians are either trapped or partially trapped in this direction. Without sending like the huge amount of the army forces, they're unable to propel forward. Basically with this attack attempt that wasn't really precisely planned by Russians, and moreover the supplies were really terrible for them, they trapped themselves. But I would still say that there is still a chance for the Russian army if they definitely procure lots and lots of the reinforcements. And we know that they gather some of the resources not far away from this area. As President Zelensky says, Russians are getting ready to propel during the autumn time. So we'll see. For now, the picture looks quite good for Ukrainians here. What else we have for today is the fantastic video presented to us by Primary drone unit, which continued to demolish Russian military infrastructure in Crimea. For example, here you may see a couple of the Russian helicopters. Let's watch this video. We're starting from this road. You can see one more drone is flying. Yeah, it is kind of the interesting design. I haven't seen the images of those from close perspective. But here we go, they fly to the local airfield, yes. Well, judging on this tower, I would say that it's the Simferopol airfield because it has this big tower. I've flown to Simferopol several of the times before 2014, before Russian occupation of Crimea. And here we have the first patient, a Mi-8 helicopter. You may see it closely. Roughly 1 month ago, Ukraine already hit several of the Russian helicopters in Simferopol, and this is the second attack. And here we have two more helicopters. You may see Mi-8 over here and Mi-8 over there. Well, it was a precise hit. Okay, this is the RLS, so radar station, but in front there is very important Neba-U radar, which is being used for tracking the air targets, but somehow here it wasn't aware that the drone is coming towards it. And you see it was operational, it was rotating, it is visible on this video. Two more helicopters. What is this? Again, Mi-8 helicopter. Well, this strike 100% was a precise one. Plus there is the satellite image confirmation, so Russian army has losses even in Crimea. And I think that Ukraine is going to reinforce those attacks. So primary unit is very capable. Speaking more about Crimea, Russians report that Ukraine started to use Neptune missiles to hit Russian military infrastructure before Ukraine mostly used drones. Well, it's a good step for Ukraine. Maybe one day those Neptunes could reach Kerch Bridge. Alright, now back to the front lines. We have some awesome news coming from Noel Reports. Again, their analytics checked out Russian Telegram channels, and not only what Russian military bloggers and Russian soldiers say about this direction. Well, the situation is absolutely not good for Russians. They say that Ukraine is attacking in three of the main directions, one towards Konstantinivka from Kindrativka, then from Andriivka and Varachina towards Alexeyevka, and many of the Russian forces had to retreat from Alexeyevka, but some of the forces are barely holding there, that is what Russians say. Plus the fights are ongoing in Yunakiivka because Russia recently tried to counterattack here, deploying more forces, but again they're barely holding because Ukraine pushed them also hard. The information about the terrible situation for the Russian army in the Sumy region mostly comes from the Russia's 30th regiment that keeps getting thrown head first, so it's like the Russian fire brigade, yeah? For example, they operate now in Yunakiivka, but they tell that no, they cannot hold this line. So I'm sure that very soon Ukraine is going to propel forward, liberating some of the villages in Sumy region, because Russia was forced actually to get their forces out from Sumy. They're gathering their forces in Pokrovsk direction and attempt to counterattack Ukrainian army. Yeah, for now it's Ukrainian counterattack and a Russian attack, and now Russians want to reinforce their group to take the ground after all, but we'll see how it goes for that one. But what I may say already, that Sumy operation for Russian army mostly failed. They are unable to get more ground, they're unable to keep the ground, and it's time for Ukraine to keep this initiative. Here we have more information about Oleksiivka, Sumy region, which is presented to us by 225th Brigade of Ukrainian Army. We have a Ukrainian flag there, probably was even delivered by drone, but Russians hesitate to remove it, which means that they're very busy to be bothered by Ukrainian flags. And one more Russian Z channel says that Oleksiivka will have to retreat from Oleksiivka, they say. Now the situation is the same as in Kondrativka, and Russia was forced to retreat from Kondrativka. They also say that they lost the vast part of their regiment, 30th regiment over there. Well, they put the new people in that regiment, but they were not able to fight well because they don't have any sort of the military experience. They say that they're just pensioners and sometimes alcoholics. All of the cherry picks of our society. Interesting. And here we have more of the screenshots of 225th Ukrainian brigade that continue to operate in Sumy region. They are already there for a very, very long time. So yeah, absolutely great news for us. Yeah, this is the place of the most heavy fighting now between Kondrativka and Konstantinivka. Russians are very concerned about this village. They are up to lose it, as they say.
Штабу пизда, там всему пизда.
Штабу пизда, там всему пизда. It means our headquarters is kaputted and everything there is kaputted. Yeah. Kind of interesting video filmed by the Russian soldier somewhere in Donbass. Eastern front lines, Ukraine burned down some of the Russian headquarters or the Russian base. Russian soldier is damn unhappy about it. Parapax, that's the watermark of the Telegram channel where I took it. And here's the image itself of the Russian base. Definitely something big is burning there. And you know, guys, I see more and more of those cases. Then Ukraine uses long-range drones not to target long-range targets, but to target something in a close proximity to the front line. Like, for example, that base was on occupied territory. Oh boy, what we have here is the Ukrainian strike on Russian fuel storage somewhere on the front lines. So there are many of the Russians who got scared. Yeah, I would myself, because this is definitely a huge mushroom. They had lots of the fuel stored there. Well, I cannot really play this video here on YouTube, but from what I understood, judging on the comments from the Russian soldier, he is not like really Russian, he is Chechen. From Akhmat battalion, it means that it could be even a Russian territory. Kursk Oblast, Belgorod, Bryansk, occupied territories of Ukraine behind the front lines, it's the usual place for Akhmat. An interesting vehicle was kaputted by Ukraine. This is the Russian engineering vehicle. It's called IMR-3M. As you might see, the base was taken from the tank, and this is the very capable vehicle actually. It is used to penetrate enemy engineering structures, including Dragon T's, some of the trenches. It may also demine the minefields, and also it may construct some of the barricades. But Russia doesn't have lots of those vehicles, it is quite rare. It was chased by Ukrainian drones who dropped some of the grenades right on the engine compartment. You may see the heat is going from the aft part, yeah? The vehicle was stopped and finished. Usually Russians are doing those drone flag operations. For example, this is the drone on top. It carries the Russian flag to deliver it somewhere on top of the building or something. Yeah, very interesting, yeah? But the drone was intercepted by Ukrainian electronic warfare, and the flag is lying down somewhere in the field. Here we go, yeah? The Russian flag. Finally they put it, but Ukraine decided to kaput it even there. Wow, time flies really fast. Exactly 3 years ago, Putin had announced a massive mobilization in Russia. Officially, they recruited roughly 300,000 soldiers, but it could be more. And what's about the current situation in the Russian army? Do they really need a new mobilization? I would say yes. Because compared to 2024, this year there are less volunteers who would like to join Russian army, roughly 40% less. But at the same time, we see the intensification of the military actions on the front line and more losses connected to that. So I think that this step for Russia is inevitable. I mean, new mobilization. It's just a question of time, and then Putin decides to do it. And how many people they also want to mobilize. Oh, this is kind of interesting video. We see the F-16 in operation. There's the target, and it's been kaputted by missile. That was the Shahid drone, so F-16s are mostly used to protect Ukrainian skies over Ukraine itself, usually far behind the front lines, because Russia unfortunately has advanced tools to intercept the Ukrainian F-16s, and once they already did it. Some escalation news from Europe. Germany had to launch their fighter jets to intercept the Russian reconnaissance airplane Ilyushin 20M. NATO jets were just flying very close to Ilyushin 20. By the way, I know Ilyushin 20 very, very well, because even my grandpa was flying that kind of the airplane for Red Army in the Soviet Union. Well, not just this one, there's also modification for Antonov 12 as a reconnaissance airplane. So I would say I'm familiar with their operation. What they do is they fly very close to the NATO border or the border of the possible enemy country, and they attract the surveillance systems. Sometimes they fly accompanied with different other airplanes, like for example strategic bombers. So if some ground radar tries to track this target, immediately it is being spotted by this reconnaissance aircraft. So 100% Russia collects the information about NATO defense capabilities near Baltics. My grandpa did the same job for Iraqi forces that were allied to Soviet Union before Iran-Iraq war. They flown like that before the hot stage of the military conflict, so it helped Iraqi army to understand the locations of the ground raiders of Iran. That was the ally of the United States of America by that time. Yeah, time changes. So you may see a hint here, yeah, why Russia is flying their reconnaissance airplanes, trying to collect all of the data. It could be one more concerning signal for our allies in NATO. Well, Donald Trump today stated that the United States will help protect Poland if Russia continues escalation. Alright, so will help sounds kind of interesting. It doesn't mean we will protect Poland, but we will help. Yeah, with what Donald Trump could help, he didn't specify. In general, guys, I see the weakest possible reaction from our Western ally, United States of America, and from NATO in general. And Donny, what's about Baltic countries? Can you do the same for them, like at least help? Guys, it is very concerning as for me, and the signals that I see coming from Russian officials, they are frightening actually. I'm not saying that this escalation will happen this year or the next one, however, still there is the chance even for that, but definitely we see that Putin's appetite goes beyond Ukraine. Yes, sorry, there is the watermark which I closed with my image. So Putin again continued to threaten Europe. He said that you've been told that your difficulties are because of the Russian, as a result of the Russian hostile actions, and then you have to pay for the efforts to counter the alleged Russian threat from your own pockets. All of that is a lie. So do not help Ukraine, do not pay with your pockets. We are not a threat for you, but we are launching 20 drones to Poland, we are flying to your airspace on our fighter jets, and we are collecting your data of your radars using our reconnaissance airplanes. Okay, so what's the truth? The truth is that the problems faced by millions of people in the West are the result of many years of actions by ruling elite of your representative countries, their mistakes and short-sighted policies and ambitions. This elite is not thinking about how to improve the lives of their own citizens in West countries or Western countries, yeah. They are obsessed with their own self-servicing interests, and we heard from Putin. It sounds like a funny joke, but it's not funny at all, because the same stuff he said relative to Ukraine, that come on Ukrainians, your pensions are low, Russians are living better life, your government is grinding you down, they have their own elite interests, and after that Putin started the war in Ukraine. How ugly he really is. So Europeans, Putin thinks that you have kind of the miserable lives out there in Europe under your politicians' ruling, so Russia wants to go and liberate you from everything, including your cities, towns, sometimes lives. This video was filmed in Mirnograd, Pokrovsk direction. This is the Mirnograd, I guess, itself. You see, no building survives the war. Yeah, that is exactly what Russian regime means by the word liberation. Be aware. An interesting statement from Donald Trump: if Afghanistan doesn't give Bahrain air base back to those that built it, the United States of America, bad things are going to happen. President Trump. So Donny wants to get back to Afghanistan. Am I surprised? Absolutely not. Expect unexpected with Donald Trump, but I want to tell less about Donny on this channel. Here I will tell about him just in the context of Ukraine. If there are some of the actions of Donald Trump relative to Ukraine or to NATO itself, to security of Europe or Taiwan, for example, we may discuss it on this channel. But for different topics, including Donald Trump, I have another channel. It's called Captain Dennis, where I already filmed about this background base, and you may check it out. The link for my another channel is in the video description just below. Here are some of the political news, general news, some really different stuff. And this channel is about Ukraine mainly, but here I also may speak about the situation worldwide. For example, as I did already covering events in Syria, Iran, and I hope I will not cover any more wars. There should be less wars in our world. But this channel is dedicated for this topic and for my different content. Subscribe for Denis Davidov. By the way, I stream there almost every day. Also, I stream on Twitch, on the Kick, I have my Telegram, I have my Patreon for your direct support of the channel. So guys, follow me elsewhere. Thank you. Oh, interesting. I actually saw this video from the Russian Z propaganda. This guy is actually Polish traitor who left Poland to fight for the Russian Federation. His name is, or it's better to say was, Jerzy Tic. He used to be a Polish policeman, but he loved Russia so much he wasn't understood back in Poland, so he went to Russia to actually fight against Ukraine. But just today I read in the Russian Z channels that this guy was zeroed on the front line, flatlined. His sincere love towards Russia was cancelled together with him. Yeah, Russia loves those kind of the guys from the West coming because they might use those for their own propaganda purposes, but still they send those to the front lines. So after all, the logical kaput cancels the previous propaganda because they may say everything they can, but if they kaput, it means that something is wrong for the Russian army out there in Ukraine. Even one of the main Russian propagandists, Solovyov, said about the tragic deaths of Jerzy Tic, who had the call sign Zygmunt. He fought against Nazis, blah blah blah. Yeah, the usual stuff we heard from the Russian propaganda. For them, we're all Nazis, plus Putin also recently stated that there are lots of the Nazis in Europe, and they're growing even more than in Ukraine. Oh, just now while I'm recording this video, there was the information about the fire caused by Kaboom in Crimea. This is Foros place. Local channels reported about drones, Kabooms, Treletsky is on fire. I'll try to find out what is that, but looks kind of interesting. Well, it seems like Russia is planning to continue the war for a very long time. Those are children from the Russian kindergarten, and they went to the government military club in their age, before school even. And here they proudly say that all of the group went to join them. This is shown on Russia 1, Russian propaganda. They are wearing military uniform at the very beginning. They have some of the military, maybe Russian veteran or something. Those children are doomed. Russian society as well. The only thing that could save us, I mean democracy, is for Russia to start the internal confrontation, internal collapse, because people in Russia are getting more zombed and militarized. They're getting ready for aggressive actions for extended period of time, not just against Ukraine, believe me. And in our democratic world, this kind of education, well, it's not possible. It is a North Korean style autocracy. Those are the advantages of the military dictatorships, because they may mobilize how many people they want and no one would dare to say a thing. Also, those countries may sustain absolutely huge losses. Russia lost 1 million soldiers altogether, KA and wounded, and Russian society is absolutely calm about it. And that is the biggest threat, because Putin understands that he may mobilize 1 million soldiers and it would be still fine for his power. From this perspective, it's a very bad situation. Democracies cannot allow those losses. People would never agree on that price of the war. And Putin understands that, so the only force which is capable to cause harm for Russia is actually Ukraine. At least for today, it's like that, so it's important for Europe to support Ukraine. Also for United States, it is also important, but Donald Trump doesn't understand that stuff. Okay guys, special thanks for my Patreon supporters and also for members of this YouTube channel. Thank you so much for making this content possible. Without you, I wouldn't be able to dedicate all of my time for the stuff I do here. So you hire me and I film every freaking day. And you may join my Patreon with a link in the video description just below. And for everyone, many thanks for you too for watching my videos, for liking them, for subscribing on my channel. And I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.